So, I don't know about you, but I grew up watching Power Rangers. The original show, I want to say, premiered in '93. I was 8 years old at the time, so like, I'd just been watching Ninja Turtles, and Power Rangers comes out, and they have giant robots. So in my worldview, and for an 8-year-old, giant robots equals better than the Ninja Turtles. Sorry,
that's just logic.
Yeah. You can't argue with logic like that.
No.
And I had mixed feelings. Mostly positive feelings when I heard that they were going to do this movie reboot of sorts. And I feel like if we were doing this podcast before, when they had that initial reveal of what the suits were going to be for the Power Rangers in the movie, I think we would have definitely covered it back then. My feelings on them haven't really changed. They look kind of weird. I am not sure what they were trying to go with their. I mean, there's really nothing. There's really nothing realistic looking about them. I honestly don't know what kind of look they were going for. But all that to say, Bryan Cranston, of course, you may know him from hit shows as Breaking Bad and Malcolm in the Middle. He actually, while he was breaking into the industry, he did voices for some of the monsters on the original run of Power Rangers. Bryan Cranston. Yeah. He did some of the monster voices. And I found that out a few years ago, and I thought that was cool. And, oddly enough, he has been cast to play Zordon. So right there, they're making good decisions. Because Bryan Cranston, I haven't watched Breaking Bad, and it comes down to personal reasons. I don't like to watch shows where I have to root for I'm kind of encouraged to root for the bad guy. And I know it's kind of Shakespearean what happens to him in the show. He starts off with, a good person with good intentions, and they completely bring him down this dark path. Some people may find that interesting. I don't. So I never plan on watching Breaking Bad, but Bryan Cranston, I think he's an amazing actor. Everything that I have seen him in, he's been great in. Now, he's recently talked about being in the movie as Zordon. He was actually talking to the Huffington Post, and I guess they asked him about what his opinion about the original Power Rangers show, and he used words that I can't disagree with. Being an adult now, he described it as being farcical, silly, weird movements, and things like that. Probably talking about the poses that they would do. That, hey, it was Super Sentai, it was Japanese. Of course, you're going to have that, in the footage there, and heaven forbid if you alter that. Yeah. So he continues after, and he's talking about, he wasn't convinced to play Zordon until he spoke to the movie's director. And he's quoted as saying, "After that, I went, this is different. This is as different as reimagining as the Batman television series as it became the Batman movie series." And he went on to clarify that he's comparing the 60s Batman series with Adam West to the Christopher Nolan trilogy of Batman films. And that there's no comparison. Two very different interpretations of the character.
Yeah.
And he says, he goes on to say, you can't compare those two, and nor can you compare this movie version of the Power Rangers to that television series. He goes on to describe, how the he did compare to the Nolan Batman trilogy, but he also said that he didn't think it was going to be as dark. He said that they're going to be, dealing with teenager issues. He said, it's the appropriateness of that and real teenage life and going through high school and the cliques and the popularity or lack thereof and the bullies and all the different sections and subsections of high school life and the insecurities of these kids and things like that, hopes and dreams, and you embrace all of that into a retelling of the Power Rangers. So, and then he also described his character, Zordon, as being a real person trapped in this ether world who becomes this in the wall, so to speak, of the command center. So it sounds like everything that I've heard about this movie, even though the suits, they really haven't sold me on the suits. Maybe when I see them in action, in some trailers, it'll look better. They really should have gone like the Iron Man route and made these suits look like, like robotic suits, and even have like the stiff movements that Iron Man has that are completely plausible. But, then again, they're doing martial arts moves, and I can see how...
I was going to say, you can't get that full range of motion for doing, like, the martial arts that they do with
That's true.
A suit like that.
So it may just be a, what's the word I'm looking for? A compromise that they had to make. I'm not going to completely say, the movie's terrible. Like, some people have been like, the movies are going to be terrible, because look at those suits. They look ridiculous. Just wait until you see a trailer, see them in action, before you come to any conclusions with that sort of thing. But everything I've heard about the movie has just encouraged me to think this has a good shot of being a pretty good movie, I think.
Well, in my opinion, first off, the suits, I don't think they look as bad as they could.
Definitely. They could look a lot worse.
Yeah. And, I mean, when you think about this, I don't really have anything to compare it to, just because I can't compare this to what the Batman movies were, just because those are two different things. Kind of, they might choose like a darker route for this movie, kind of like the Batman trilogy did, as compared to like the Adam West series, where it was just Batman's a goofball. The Power Rangers originally were just like, it was a bunch of teenagers in high school, and I don't know, they knew some form of martial arts, and then they would go fight these like weird creatures, and everything that they did in the series was exaggerated. Like the explosions, the explosions were actually the least dramatic thing. It was their movements compared to the explosions. So like an explosion would happen, it'd be like small, and they'd just go flying, and they'd make it like super dramatic, just like flailing all their limbs.
It would just be like little sparks flying out of, their costumes.
And then they'd get hit by like a giant sword, and it would just, like, nothing happened. And like, you look at their armor, and it's just cloth. Like, it really was just cloth at the time. Like, the helmet was like the only solid piece of armor. Maybe like...
The gloves are probably like a rubber kind of deal.
And their boots, but the shirt, the pants, everything else was cloth. It was clearly cloth. So, everything in that show was just super dramatic, over exaggerated, and it had to be, because like their audience was like little kids, like watching these like teenagers, like these people that like little kids look up to people who are older than them, like especially to, I want to say, like big brother and big sister role models. Like little kids definitely look up to people like that, because they're not adults, and like some kids see adults as like, oh, you're the bad person in my life right now, and then like they see like teenagers as, wow, that's so cool. So like, kids kind of like look up to teenagers more than they do adults. So that was their core audience, and they were just like, okay, well, kids don't care about super realistic things, so let's just over exaggerate everything.
Well, and the other thing is when you're emoting as an actor, you have to, if your face is completely covered and you cannot emote through your facial expressions, the only thing you have left is pantomime. You have to, like, when you're talking, you've got to move your head around like this to make sure it looks like you are actually talking and not just standing there like this, but imagine just having your face covered.
Yeah.
Like, That would be a lot worse than the over dramatized, like, head bobbing and just overemphasizing everything that you're saying.
Yeah. So to this, I think they're going to try and capture the audience of kids nowadays, try and like bring them back to like that cool Japanese-esque American action uh, type movie or cartoon. But I feel like they're also trying to capture maybe the kids that, or maybe the people who used to be kids watching that, but now they're like young adults or like normal adults. Um, I feel like they're going to try and cater to them, which is why the suits look like the way they do. Less. It looks less kiddie and a little bit more serious, but it still has kind of like the Power Rangers, like this is for kids look to them. So it's like kind of finding a compromise between the two.
Hmm.
I think they're trying to go for an all audience type thing, kind of like Transformers,
Yeah.
which the first one wasn't bad. I liked the first one. The second one was okay. Everything after that is kind of like explosions. Hopefully they don't do that with Power Rangers. I wasn't planning on seeing it, but I mean,
Bryan Cranston, Zordon.
I know. But every time I look at him, I'm just gonna imagine him yelling at Stewie. Not Stewie, Dewey.
I was about to say, I don't think he was on Family Guy.
No, Malcolm in the Middle was a good show.